This video is brought to you by Squarespace. Stick around to learn more about how Squarespace can help you build your own beautifully designed website or online store with ease. The 1996 film Scream opens with the murder of high school student Casey Becker and her boyfriend Steve at the hands of the mysterious Ghostface killer. Fellow high school student Sidney Prescott is still struggling with the murder of her mother Maureen 1 year prior by her young lover Cotton Weary. As the media descend on the town of Woodsboro to cover the murders, Sidney is forced to confront her emotional trauma. Part of the media frenzy is reporter Gale Weathers, a cold and cutthroat reporter who will stop at nothing to get the best story. And trying to help save the town from a vicious killer is Dewey Riley, a kind-hearted and bumbling deputy sheriff. Sidney's friend group includes boyfriend Billy Loomis, best friend Tatum Riley, who was also the sister of Deputy Dewey, Tatum's boyfriend Stu Mocker, and Randy Meeks, a nerdy fan of horror movies who is constantly referencing and acknowledging patterns and motives of famous movie killers. Sidney soon begins receiving calls from the killer, who stalks and taunts her throughout the film. Ghostface kills the high school's principal Hembry, then kills Tatum at a house party. Dewey is later stabbed and thought to be dead. Eventually, Billy Loomis reveals himself to be the killer, with his best friend Stu acting as his accomplice. They plan to kill Sidney and pin all of the murders on her father. Billy also reveals that he had killed Sidney's mother Maureen the year prior and framed Cotton, as Maureen was having an affair with Billy's father, driving his mother away. Just as Billy is about to kill Sidney, Gale arrives to intervene. Sidney and Gale kill Stu and Billy, and it's revealed that Dewey survived his knife wounds, although they do leave him with permanent nerve damage and a limp. Scream 2 opens with the premiere of Stab, a film based on the book Gale Weathers wrote about the Woodsboro Massacre. At the film's premiere, Windsor College students Maureen and Phil are murdered by a Ghostface copycat killer. Sidney Prescott was now enrolled at Windsor College and trying to move on with her life, so these new murders send her life into complete disarray. Fellow classmates of Sidney at Windsor College include her high school friend Randy Meeks, new best friend Hallie, her new boyfriend Derek Feldman, and Derek's best friend Mickey. Following the arrival of the copycat killer, Dewey Riley goes to Windsor College to ensure Sidney's safety. Gale Weathers arrives with a flurry of other reporters to cover the ongoing case, and constantly butts heads with a reporter named Debbie Salt, who is obsessed with both the original case and Gale Weathers' coverage of it. Also arriving at the college is Cotton Weary, who, following his exoneration of Maureen Prescott's murder, has become obsessed with the media attention and hopes to convince Sidney to sit down with him for a nationally televised interview with Diane Sawyer. Randy tries to help uncover the new killer, utilizing his knowledge of past horror films and their sequels, but he's eventually stabbed to death by the new Ghostface. Also murdered are sorority girl Cece Cooper and Sidney's best friend Hallie. As Gale and Dewey team up to try to solve the case, the cold-hearted Gale begins to soften up and even starts a relationship with Dewey. That love affair is quickly cut short when the pair are attacked by Ghostface, and Dewey is once again brutally stabbed. As all of her friends are getting killed off around her, Sidney begins to suspect that once again it was her boyfriend behind the mask causing the massacre. But eventually Sidney discovers that her boyfriend Derek was truly innocent, as Mickey has Derek tied up and reveals himself to be the killer. Mickey kills Derek and confesses to Sidney his master plan, going on a murder spree and getting caught, only to blame violent movies like Stab for normalizing murder at his trial. And then Mickey reveals his accomplice, reporter Debbie Salt, who is actually Billy Loomis's mother, who wanted revenge on Sidney for her son's death. Mrs. Loomis then kills Mickey and attacks Sidney, but just as Mrs. Loomis has the upper hand, Cotton Weary arrives to save Sidney. Cotton shoots Mrs. Loomis in the neck, but to ensure she was truly dead, Sidney puts another bullet in Mrs. Loomis's head. Dewey is revealed to have survived his encounter with Ghostface, and instead of reporting on the events, Gale decides to join Dewey in his ambulance. As reporters flood Sidney with questions, she directs them instead to Cotton, calling him the true hero of the story. And so Cotton gets the attention he'd been craving, and Sidney is allowed to finally step out of the spotlight. In Scream 3, Cotton Weary has achieved the fame he's long desired, hosting his own television series called 100% Cotton. When a new Ghostface killer demands information from him on the whereabouts of Sidney Prescott, Cotton refuses and is murdered alongside his girlfriend. Sidney Prescott is living a quieter life, changing her name and working as an on-call crisis counselor. As Sidney lives in seclusion, the new killer begins their murder spree, trying to draw her out of hiding. In Hollywood, Stab 3, the newest film in the franchise based on Sidney's life, is currently in production. Detective Mark Kincaid calls on Gale Weathers to help him catch the new Ghostface killer, who starts to pick off the Stab 3 cast, starting with actress Sarah Darling. The main cast of Stab 3 includes Angelina Tyler as Sidney Prescott, Jennifer Jolie as Gale Weathers, Tom Prince as Dewey Riley, and Tyson Fox as the film's equivalent of Randy Meeks. Also working on the set of Stab 3 is Dewey Riley, serving as a technical advisor. He and Gale have broken up following Gale's successful career, but the two still have feelings for each other. As Dewey, Gale, and the Stab 3 cast convene at Jennifer's house to discuss their predicament, the killer strikes again, blowing up the house with Tom still inside it. When Sidney arrives in Hollywood to help stop the new Ghostface killer, the team are visited by Randy Meeks' sister Martha. She plays them a video that Randy had made before his death, warning them of how dangerous the killer in the final film of a trilogy could be. At a party for Stab 3 director Roman Bridger's birthday, the Ghostface killer strikes again, killing Angelina, Tyson, and Jennifer. The killer knocks out Detective Kincaid and ties up Dewey and Gale before revealing his true identity to Sidney. The killer was in fact Roman Bridger, who also happened to be the long-lost half-brother of Sidney Prescott. Roman was born after Maureen was assaulted during an attempt at a Hollywood career. When Roman tried to reunite with Maureen 4 years ago, she rejected him, and so a bitter Roman secretly filmed all of Maureen's extramarital affairs, including the ones she had with Cotton Weary and Billy Loomis's father. Roman then showed Billy those tapes and manipulated him into becoming the original Ghostface killer. And now Roman planned on pinning all of the Stab 3 cast murders on Sidney. The brother and sister engage in a fight, which Sidney ultimately wins, stabbing Roman 3 times before Dewey shoots him in the head. As the movie comes to a close, Dewey and Gale get engaged while Sidney finally feels at peace and that all of the murdering was behind her. And that brings us to Scream 4. It's been 15 years since the original Woodsboro massacre, and a new Ghostface killer has arrived in town, killing students at the high school. Sidney Prescott, back in her hometown on a press tour for her new book, is framed for the murders and forced to stay in Woodsboro for the duration of the investigation. Meanwhile, Dewey Riley, now the sheriff of Woodsboro, and his team of deputies, including Judy Hicks, begin investigating the new Ghostface. Dewey's wife Gale, against his objections, goes back into reporter mode to conduct her own investigation. The students at the high school being targeted by Ghostface include Sidney's cousin Jill Roberts, Jill's cheating ex-boyfriend Trevor Sheldon, her neighbor Olivia Morris, best friend Kirby Reed, and horror movie enthusiasts Charlie Walker and Robbie Mercer. Ghostface kills Olivia, and the high schoolers retreat to Kirby's house to figure out their best options. Ghostface then kills Jill's mother Kate before setting its sights on the other high schoolers. A drunken Robbie is killed first, and then Charlie reveals himself to be the killer before stabbing Kirby to death. As Sidney arrives at the house to save her cousin, Jill reveals herself to also be one of the Ghostface killers, with Charlie serving as her accomplice. Jill explains her jealousy about the fame Sidney received for being the survivor of the original Woodsboro massacre and wanted the same attention. She then kills Trevor to pin all of the murders on him and betrays Charlie, stabbing him to death to leave herself as the sole survivor. Jill then stabs Sidney and cuts herself to look like she was attacked. Dewey and Hicks arrive to rescue Sidney and Jill, unaware that Jill was actually the killer. At the hospital, Jill discovers that Sidney had survived the attack and goes to kill her. Dewey, Hicks, and Gale intervene just in time, and Sidney is forced to kill her cousin. And so once again, Sidney, Dewey, and Gale defeat the Ghostface killer and attempt to move on with their lives. 2022's Scream 5 takes place 25 years after the original Ghostface murders. A young woman named Sam Carpenter returns to her hometown of Woodsboro with her boyfriend Richie after learning that her teenage sister Tara was brutally attacked and nearly killed by a new Ghostface killer. Sam and Tara became estranged when their parents divorced following the revelation that the original Ghostface killer Billy Loomis is actually Sam's biological father. Sam and Richie then team up with Tara's high school friends to unmask and defeat the new Ghostface. Those friends include Randy Meeks' twin nephew and niece Chad and Mindy, Chad's girlfriend Liv, Tara's best friend Amber, and Wes Hicks, the son of the now sheriff Judy Hicks. While trying to unmask the killer, Sam begins to experience hallucinations of Billy Loomis and begins to fear that there was a similar evil inside of her. The new Ghostface murders Liv's ex-boyfriend Vince, who happens to be the nephew of the other original Ghostface, Stu Macher, then attacks Sam at the hospital, who manages to escape. Realizing that they needed help in stopping the killer, Sam and her friends recruit Dewey Riley, who has retired from the police force and gotten divorced from Gale. After calling to alert Gale and Sydney that a new killer is terrorizing Woodsboro, Dewey warns Sam not to trust Richie, as the heroine's boyfriend is usually the killer. The group also learns that previous Ghostface victim Kirby Reed has actually survived. After Wes and Judy Hicks are both murdered in their home, Gale arrives in town to cover the story and is reunited with her ex-husband. When Ghostface attacks Tara in the hospital, Dewey sacrifices himself to save her. Upon hearing about Dewey's death, Sidney Prescott, now married to Detective Kincaid, finally returns to Woodsboro and helps comfort the grieving Gale. Emboldened by Dewey's tragic death, the two women become resolved to defeat the new killer. While attempting to flee Woodsboro and the killing spree, Sam, Tara, and Richie are forced to stop at Amber's house to retrieve Tara's inhaler. Once there, the trio discovers that Amber is throwing a party to honor the death of Wes Hicks. And it just so happens that her house is also the former home of Stu Macher, where Sydney had her final confrontation with the original Ghostface killers. The new Ghostface then arrives at the party and attacks Chad and Mindy. As the friends all band together for safety, Amber pulls out a gun and murders Liv, revealing herself to be the new Ghostface killer. Sydney and Gale arrive to help defeat Ghostface, but their plans are thwarted when Richie reveals himself to be a second Ghostface killer. The killer duo capture Sam, Sydney, and Gale and explain their motivations. Richie and Amber were fans of the Stab film franchise based on the original Woodsboro murders, but were upset by the franchise's recent direction, including the newly released Stab 8. And so, after meeting online, Richie and Amber devised a plan to bring the original Woodsboro survivors back to town to battle new killers in the hopes of inspiring new material for a Stab reboot. With Sam being the daughter of Billy, they intended to frame her as the new Ghostface. The injured Tara then attacks the killers, giving Sam, Sydney, and Gale a chance to free themselves. Gale and Tara both shoot and kill Amber, while Sam embraces the legacy of Billy Loomis and murders Richie. With the new killers dead, Chad and Mindy are revealed to have survived. Gale decides to not write about the new killers, which would give them notoriety, and instead writes a tribute to Dewey. As the film comes to a close, the reunited Sam and Tara are taken to the hospital, their bond stronger than ever. Now I want to tell you about this video sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is an all-in-one platform that helps you build your website or online store to connect with your audience and build your brand. I've used Squarespace to build many different websites over the years, and they just helped me launch recapandchill.com. I love their video block feature that allows me to display all of my recap videos in a way that fits my style. They've also got great blogging features that make it super easy to write and schedule posts, photos, and videos for your audience. Plus, Squarespace has a built-in mobile web designer, so you can be sure that any website you build will also look great on a phone or tablet. I truly can't recommend Squarespace enough, so head on over to squarespace.com/recapandchill to get a free trial plus 10% off your first purchase of a domain or website. Thanks again to Squarespace for sponsoring this video, and thanks to you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.